Hey guys, it's your host, Bailey Cartwright. Welcome to the Stronger Scars podcast, where I invite others to dive deep into the ups and downs of physical and mental scars. Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's episode of the Stronger Scars podcast. Today I have a very special guest who took us a lot of coordination to get on here because we canceled like 60,000 times. But I'm joined with Sabrina Salov. We were just talking about how to pronounce her last name, Salov. But she is a women's soccer player at Brandeis University, which is where I'm going to be going and playing. So I'm super excited to get out there with her. And she's just a really, really cool person. So I'm excited for you guys to get to hear her story. So without further ado, Sabrina, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you're doing with your life now, where you are in college.
Okay, that's a really loaded question. I don't know how to approach this now because we're not in a job interview. This is just a podcast. Okay. So I'm from, I'm going to be a senior or a second semester senior this upcoming fall. So I'm graduating in December at Brandeis. I'm from New Rochelle, New York, which is in Westchester. It's 20 minutes outside of the city. And I'm studying economics and politics and public health at Brandeis. And yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about, so freshman year, I will continue to say this is the hardest year, I think, for most athletes, just because it's a huge, change from playing high school sports, going to college, being away from home, new people, whole new environment. And a lot of times we see a lot of people getting injured, and then that injury then is just a spiral for things to happen in their lives. So walk us through your freshman year when you got hurt for the first time, maybe not the first time in your life, but your first time in a new environment, and just kind of talk about what that was and what that was like for you.
So actually it wasn't my freshman year, it was my sophomore year. But and either way, I could still set the scene. Like freshman year, I came in like the same I usually do. Like I love the summer because I love spending all of my time just dedicating it to soccer. As much as that sounds super toxic, it's something that I love to do, and it took me away from a lot of my stress. And all of my best friends are on my team. I felt a lot of accomplishment and like reward from playing soccer and just training and just coming in and just showing how much I cared about what we were doing. And I didn't play a lot, and that was completely fine. Like I was a freshman, and I understood that there were a lot of great players also on my team that I was competing with. And it's just, as much as I can blame it on other things, like it was just, I was in a place where I wasn't taking it out on myself. I kind of just put my head down, try to do the best that I could do every single day. And I had really great teammates, and those were the people that really pushed me to want to go to practice and want to compete and want to get better every day. And that's where I initially had my first time, or a foundation for just having my drive and like motivation playing soccer be more team oriented and not really about myself, and had nothing to do with injury. And then the next year, or preparing for the next fall, I just I took it to the next level, and I have never been so dedicated and just like strong-minded in my entire life. I was working out every single day, like not meaning just lifting, but been working with a personal trainer and then also training for soccer. And then that was something that was basically taking up most of my time. And I had a part-time job, but most of my days were consumed playing soccer, like fueling for soccer, or doing extra stuff on my own. And this is because like I wanted to come into preseason without any excuse to like not play, or not even that. I just wanted to make an impact. And we ended the season my freshman year kind of on a bad note. We lost in the first round of the tournament, and we just had a lot more potential. And I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to help my team get there that next year, or make it further the next year. And so I mean, I immediately like saw the impact when I got to preseason. Like I was playing super well. I did really well in fitness, and I just felt like amazing. I felt unstoppable because I just did everything that I knew I had to do, and I felt proud of like how I was playing. I had never played soccer that well, I think, in like all my years of playing, and that was something I was super proud of because I knew it was what I wanted. And um, I I guess also that meant it wasn't just like my tactical and like technical preparation, but I started to rethink about how I was feeling myself because I really wanted to just check off like all of like the exogenous variables of like what could be contributing to like my performance. And I wanted to make sure that I had a really like robust and like comprehensive like commitment to the sport and like the team. And I started to really like think about and reframe like how I approach fueling for games, like before games. I didn't really think about it that much in high school. And when I guess when I went into my sophomore season and like during preseason and then going into like the regular season, I was a lot more, or it didn't seem like it didn't seem to me that it was super problematic or obsessive, but it felt like I was just being super responsible in the way where I was just trying to eat, and the way that I framed it in my head, like super clean. Like I did not want to put things in my body that I didn't feel would help me on the field. Like for example, like I wanted to make sure that I was eating a snack like at a certain time before practice or like at a certain time before bed, so I wouldn't mess up like my sleeping schedule and stuff like that. And then all these little things started adding up when I got injured. So it was like the beginning of the season and it was the end of preseason. I pulled my groin, and this just like when I went to the trainers, how we got to the conclusion that it was just me overworking it, and obviously it just makes sense. You're playing a lot of soccer every day, and which is fine, but I just had to sit out for a week or so, and that really that was really hard for me because for the first time I felt like my coach was recognizing me and I was getting more time, and I was also feeling really appreciated and really respected by my teammates. And not only that, I just feel like I was connecting with everyone more because I was super excited and like happy to be there. And so when I was injured and then all this happened, like I was scared that I was going to lose that spot or whatever it was, like that little credibility that that I had in that time. And I kind of just I kind of like shut down, and this was how I was started to like compromise with my eating. And I was like thinking like, how am I going to make up for all like the work that I put in this summer and all the things I've been doing this preseason, now to just lose it for a week, or then it became 2 weeks and then 2.5. And I was just super scared about what this meant for me because obviously this is out of my control, and I felt like I did everything that I could control. And my coach, when I talked to my coach about it, I mean, at least I felt like, no, I'm not going to say I felt like, because this is true. I received like confirmation that this wouldn't be held against me. So I was just trying to just super believe in that. And obviously things happen, and you know, like I can't be mad at the fact that that's not what the reality was when I did come back from my injury. But then at the same time, when I did come back, there were things that happened later on. I had a kidney infection, and then I lost a lot of like, I forgot the condition that when you lose your period, but because of that, I was just not getting any sleep. Like I was getting fevers all the time, and I was going to the hospital a few times, and like the doctors didn't really know what was going on. And this put a lot of like distrust, I guess, in my coaches, and like my ability to play or like perform. And no one really like my coaches weren't ever really like checking in with me and like asking me how I was doing in that time. It was kind of just like, oh, like we're gonna have to like get back to this like when you're better. And then I remember when I was playing, and again, like while this was all happening, I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. I wasn't eating a lot. To emphasize like me compromising on not playing, like was not, I was not respecting myself at all to just do the bare minimum, not let alone play a sport. And this looked like me like warming up, and I actually almost fainted because I just was so overtired and I had zero energy. And my skin was like all purple and like everything was like flushed, and I had bags under my eyes, and like I guess one of my coaches came up to me, or one of my teammates, and asked me if I was like okay. And I eventually ended up going in a meeting with my assistant coach, and I kind of opened up to her about how I've been struggling, about how I've been so anxious about coming to practice and coming to games, because I feel like no matter what I do, as much as I am not healthy, but this, I didn't, at the same time, I didn't think this was my fault. I had no idea I had any of these, like this was related to the way I was handling my stress, like not sleeping, not eating. I was just telling her that I just feel like I'm super anxious all the time, and not doing well, I guess, generally, or showing up as I typically would, because I was just super anxious about putting in all this work and putting in all this energy and dedication and like thought into my game, and just wanting to be better and wanting to make a difference and wanting to make an impact. And it was never going to, I was never going to get the validation for it. And that didn't always mean like playing time. I just meant like I felt like I just was not, I felt like super invisible. And that was super hard for me because I really cared about the team. And she thought that, well, I mean, I do agree with her, and I am super thankful that she said this, but she thought that I should not just like put these frustrations and like these thoughts like and put them on her, but to also talk to somebody about it outside of soccer, because just to like have a clear mind and a space where I wouldn't be able to hold anything back, and to really just figure out what was going on. And so I started doing that, and it wasn't until I started speaking to a therapist that I was referred to by my assistant coach at the time, and she happened to be an eating disorder specialist, and immediately she saw all of the correlating behaviors and anxieties and just outcomes of like what was going on in my life, like how that meant less eating, less sleeping, injury, lack of performance, and then lack of confidence and just stability in my life. Like I just felt like generally there's a lot of lack of control. And when I couldn't play soccer and when I was injured, I wasn't able to use soccer as like my outlet and that space that was like safe for me anymore, And that meant that like that competitive drive that I had was like all going to like the way that I was like feeding myself and like doing extra things on the side with PT. Like I needed to have some sort of like sense of like pride and like outlet outside of academics, because there was just so much stress that was going on with like soccer and school that it felt like I needed, like I didn't know who I was anymore. And when I couldn't play anymore and I couldn't like be a teammate the way that I used to be, I just felt super lost. And like that resorted to like me just becoming not only even more isolated, like from, I guess, my teammates and just the spaces that I used to enjoy, but I really was just, I wasn't healthy, and I didn't realize that all of these things were like reinforcing each other. I thought that me keeping everything in and like not talking to my teammates about it and not talking to my coaches about anything was making me a better teammate, because we had like this whole thing where it's like you didn't want to talk about playing time, you didn't want to talk about your frustrations with like our coach's decisions. And I just feel like I generally have this brand of being super outgoing and happy. And the last thing I would want anyone to do or think is that, or last thing I'd want anyone to think of me is that I was just having a really hard time and struggling, and that I wasn't mentally there or even just happy to be there. And that was the hardest part for me, was when I had to admit that to myself, you know?
Yeah. Well, okay, let's back it up a little bit. I want to talk. So I was texting Sabrina earlier. I said, like, I haven't had anyone on here talk about an eating disorder, because not that it's not out there, because it is out there. I think it is super common around in college athletics specifically. I know, like, in myself, I never had an eating disorder, but when I was hurt and I wasn't working out like my teammates, I was super overly conscious about what I was putting in my body, what I was going to look like, what were people going to judge me because I wasn't working out, but I was eating pasta for dinner. It was definitely something on my mind. And I'm just kind of curious if you can share with the listeners, what are some of those signs, some of those things that you remember you were dealing with, that again you didn't really understand what it was until you went and saw a therapist, but what were some of those warning signs that you remember going through?
Yeah, so I'm going to try to be as articulate as I can, because I've been like trained to speak about like body image issues and eating disorders, because I facilitate a group on campus that concerns like these issues. And we try not to use like numbers and specific like details that would trigger other people, but just generally, I think that it doesn't, like, I want to, just for just generally, like, I guess for people that are also listening, my experience doesn't mean that your experience isn't also valid or isn't real. Everyone's experience with an eating disorder is super different. And there's all these different types of diagnoses that you can get. And so before I go, I'd want to say that I specifically had anorexia nervosa and orthorexia, which respectively are they're eating disorders that concern. Anorexia is concerning like the fear of food and fear of your body changing and getting bigger because, I guess, of eating. And orthorexia is just super obsessive about how and like what and like the quality of the types of food you're eating, I guess, and the types of exercises you're doing. It's just it's more obsessive. It's not really a fear. But I had kind of had both of those things happening at once. And I also think that there's also this general idea that someone with an eating disorder is super judgmental of other people and other people's sizes. And for me, I always felt like I never felt like I was comparing myself to other people, because of, with my experience of like body image issues, it was more so that I always felt that my personal struggles, like, I wanted to just keep within myself, and I never wanted to relate to anyone else. I never wanted to like exert that, I guess, vengeance on somebody else, when I knew it was always something that I was struggling on my own. And when I was like playing soccer and like trying to train for soccer and like trying to be better for soccer, that came with my body changing. And when I came back to school, and after like the most intense and the most dedicated summer, I guess, I had for soccer, I looked different. Like, I was thinner, but I also was stronger. For the first time, I was doing a long-term sports training program. I was running every single day, or not every single day, I think, but every other day, and just playing soccer all the time. And this doesn't sound healthy. And at the time, for me, it didn't feel like it was unhealthy. But now, when I start to think about these things and I understand the importance of rest, like, I have realized how bad it is. And when I came to school, though, and people were immediately making comments about how good I looked, and that I looked so ripped, and that I looked so like small and that like I was so like jacked, or like they would make comments about like how they wish they had my body, or I don't know. I don't want to again sound like I'm like different, but I never really felt good about those things because I was always like friends with these same people, and I've never felt like my respect from them was from my body or from the way that I looked. Like I just knew that I always wanted to make a difference by like the way that I was treating people and how I connected with them. And so immediately, like, I mean, it's also because my friends from home are just we're all super like confident in ourselves and self-aware that our conversations were never about our bodies and were never about comparing. Like we were just super interested in what we had to say and what we were doing. And when that was happening, when I got to school, and it makes sense when you don't know these people that well, like I wasn't enjoying these conversations that we were having. And then when I started to go to therapy and realize like how conditioned these ideas were of like what our body should look like as athletes and as just females generally, I started to like really get stressed out and like really think about it all the time now, because when people would compliment me or make comments about what I was eating, I now wasn't like thinking like, okay, like whatever, like I don't really like thanks, I guess. But now I was like, oh my God, like they're internalizing like all these ideas of like whatever, like what else are they thinking of me? Now what if I'm not doing this? What if I don't look like this? Are they gonna think that like I am lazy? Are they gonna think that I'm not healthy anymore? And I wasn't even being healthy when they were making these comments to me, you know, like I wasn't eating enough, I wasn't sleeping enough, and I was exercising way too much. Like and um it's not even like I never felt bad about it because I think I did it more in private and no one really made me feel guilty about it, but it was always just people celebrating it. And that was really hard for me when I was initially going through my recovery, because it was something that when I did realize I had an eating disorder, I kept it to myself because I didn't want people on my team thinking that I was judging them or trying to compare or like outcompete them and like what their bodies look like. Like it was never about that. And I have just stepping back and like thinking about all this too. I never even realized how common and like this language is about just sizism and like body talk. And I have friends on other sports teams, and it's something now that I have been like able to take out and like single out and like focus on when we're having conversations. And it's become really stressful, honestly. But now that I'm in a place where I understand that this is something entirely new and like I guess to our society as being more normalized, you know, I think that the idea of having an eating disorder with someone that was super skinny and white looking, you know, like a white, skinny, fragile girl is the idea of like what an eating disorder is. And when I told people that I was going through all of this, I didn't feel really validated. It was more like, oh, but like you look good now and like you're okay. And bringing it back, like I had to start putting like my recovery like in my own hands and not really depending on the people around me, and just understanding that like I needed to like love myself first before I could even seek it from other people. Because if I were to like depend on like the opinions and the support, I guess, from other people all the time, then I was never ever going to get better, because no one's ever going to understand what you're going through. And I guess that was even more important for me though, to try to like normalize having those conversations so people don't feel like they're doing it alone, you know?
What was that like when because you eventually opened up and told your teammates, what was that kind of like for you? Because it can't be easy. Like you said, people were feeding you these comments, feeding you these ideas, and it fueled that, eating disorder. So what was it like when you finally told these people who were feeding that you weren't doing well, and this is what you've been through, and this is where you are today?
So I initially, it was super hard for me because I went to the girls that um I spoke to the most on the team, and um I was basically saying, like, this is something that I'm going through, and it wasn't something that we really talked about outside of it. I didn't, and I'm not, again, it's hard for me to, I feel like, explain this without it sounding like I have some sort of resentment towards them, because I understand that this is, again, like something that is super, I guess, conventional in terms of like mental health talk and mental health speak. Um, and when I said that I had an eating disorder, I like immediately knew, because I didn't know what it was, that they also didn't know what that meant for me. And also, given the fact that they had also made comments that made me more uncomfortable, concerning and corresponding to my condition. And so when I did it, like, it was something that was more like, hey, like, I'm letting you know that this is what I'm going through. I did expect them at first to like be super understanding and like be like more conscious about what they were saying, but you can't really expect people to treat you differently, or know how you're feeling, or even know how they're maybe hurting you, if you don't give them productive, or at least tangible information to like relate to it, And so when I was saying, and this is also because I didn't want to, again, put a lot of burden on them or make them think that like it was like their responsibility to make sure I was getting better, like check up on me. But I basically was like, guys, like, I am just like not doing well, and like soccer really stressed me out. And when I was injured, I just like was not, I wasn't treating myself, and I wasn't sleeping enough, and I wasn't fueling myself enough beforehand, but it got a lot worse. And now I feel like I'm super out of control, and I'm having to I'm seeking help, and I'm getting treated from XYZ. And that was obviously super hard to get off my chest. And I just thought that being that big and like just saying that was like enough for people to be like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to stop making comments about other people's bodies. I'm going to stop reading out loud how many calories I burned, like on my Apple Watch. I'm going to stop asking people to tell me how many rings like they closed at this time, or like how much I ate before, like complaining about how little I eat. And I also feel like just generally, it's like very common to hear or just be surrounded by conversations of people arguing about how much more or how much less they ate before or after practice. And it's just like, it's like I feel like it's so common to hear like this, like, oh my God, I ate like nothing today. Oh my God, me too. The last time I ate was at like this time this morning. And that was something that was super, super common, like little things like that. And for me, it wasn't like, oh, I was taking it personally, but knowing that those were the types of things that I was telling myself, and like trying to like, I guess, measure with myself. But it was something that I kept in my head. I didn't know how to like just straight up be like, guys, this isn't healthy and this isn't the way to do it, because it was like everybody in this conversation, like probably 4 or 5 more girls and then me. And knowing that these conversations were not really changing, I really didn't feel like I had a lot of hope, I guess, and making, I guess, an immediate difference in my team. And I kind of just shared, and I confided in a few people that were really close to me, and a few of them were my teammates, a few of them weren't. And then COVID hit, and we were all sent home. We were forced to go home, and I wasn't able to see a therapist because my therapist was at school. And with how insurance works, and I guess the institution works, is that you're not allowed to do virtual calls or continue your treatment if you're out of state, and I live in New York. So while my school is in Massachusetts, so I no longer had that support, and I spent like the entire pandemic trying to find a therapist, and everything was backed up, so I didn't receive treatment at all. And the last thing that I had in my mind, or like I knew that that summer was super miserable for me, especially in terms of my eating habits. Like any progress that I made with the dietitian, with my therapist, like I felt like I got worse. And I even kept like journal entries about all these things that I can look at now, and it's so emotional to see, because I'm so proud of the difference in the mindset that I have right now. But at one point, like I just thought I was so stuck, and this was going to be me forever, just so obsessed with what I was eating, how much I was exercising, what I was doing, and not just like enjoying myself. And so I went to like the therapist that I was speaking to at Brandeis, and I was like, I think that you're right, because she was trying to convince me to go to an intensive outpatient program. And I was like, I think I should do it in the fall, because I knew that we weren't going to have a season, and because of the pandemic. And so that's when I had to like open up to everybody that like this is what I was doing. And that was also when I partnered with the Hidden Opponent, and I opened up and shared my story there. So I guess through my story being published there, that was really how a lot of people found out, or I guess realized like what, not the extent, but just an idea of what I meant when I said like I was struggling, and that I felt like I was super alone, and that this is something that soccer was something that I had to put aside. And I think that because people know that I'm super dedicated to soccer, and that I'm really outgoing, and I'm really open, and I'm seemingly really happy, that when I did say this, that I didn't think I could play soccer, and then I didn't actually do it, people started to like really listen to me. And which is powerful, I guess, in itself, because like the whole thing about being a student athlete is that, or that you think when you're a student athlete, is that you're only doing school, you're only doing soccer or whatever sport you're doing, and you're just like super well rounded, and you're super tough. And this is something that I was super scared to come out with. And so when I did, I had a lot of people reach out to me and talk to me, and that's kind of more how the message got through to my team, was when people reached out to me individually, and they're like, Sabrina, like I was struggling with this too, and I didn't know that you were going through this. And I feel like I've been getting into really destructive behaviors, and I didn't know that like there was like resources or people to talk to about this, or like that it was a problem. And that was like when I started to realize, like, okay, like as much as I feel like I can be mad, or like feel like I should be isolating myself from like my teammates and the people, or the space that stress me out, there needs to be something that breaks the ice. And I felt like I did that. So yeah, it was definitely hard at first, and I regretted it, honestly, at first. But I think I'm really proud of how I've handled it thus far, because after that, and like being with the Hidden Opponent, and also leading a group on campus that's talking about body image and like society and our conditioned ideas of sizism and everything, I was able to lead workshops like with my team, and we had super vulnerable and like direct conversations, and like just I don't even want to say it was like curriculum based, or even just like super like I wasn't trying to make a point to be like, listen, like you need to understand this. Like I really just wanted there to be a space, and for you to understand that like it's okay to like share what you're going through. It doesn't have to be an eating disorder. Like it could be anything, and anything can really completely change your life. And make you forget like the important things that and the people and like the communities that you're a part of, because you just do it alone, you know?
Well, I think like something that goes so underrated is just being vulnerable. Like what, like if you really think about like what is the worst thing that can happen from you being vulnerable? If you're feeling some sort of way, I think we should all feel that empowerment to speak about it, because you're going to get it off your chest. You're going to feel better knowing that your truth is out there. Sure, if whatever your truth is, your vulnerability, if that makes somebody unhappy, then they don't respect you. They're not, a true friend to you. Like nothing bad can happen from being honest with what you're going through.
Yeah, and it was really just like the fear of like being a burden or like being seen as weak, like that really did make me sick. Like I didn't want to get help. I didn't want to even just like identify the problem at first, because I just didn't think it was part of my identity. Like I thought my identity was this like strong, like smart, confident soccer player, not someone who was just sick. And I didn't realize that me keeping my me rather than addressing my problems and like keeping it all inside, that had made me even more sick rather than helped me get to that place where to that person that I thought I was. It made me feel more disconnected to the people around me. And if I had chosen to like address them and like embrace them, or even just be like, you know what, yeah, I have a problem and that's okay, and I can go through it and I can get over it, and not even get over it, like I can try, like, like it wasn't even like I didn't even want to try to address a problem, because I didn't even want to admit that there was one. And if I chose to address it rather than avoid all of my issues, then I would have been a better teammate, a student, a friend, a sister. I would have been a better me. And it really like I really lost a lot of myself, and I never thought that there was ever going to be a time where I could like enjoy playing soccer, like enjoy doing things that I do every single day.
Right. So I'm kind of curious, one of the things you said that stood out to me, that is something that I even sometimes do, is I'm working out. I look down at my watch and I burn 500 calories. Like, oh my gosh, yay, I burned 500 calories. And either whether it's I'm consciously thinking that to myself or I'm voicing that to other people, if you think about that, that is not very healthy, it's great. Like, if you're burning calories, you're putting in the work, that's good and all. If you're fueling your body, if that's, something that you need to meet for a certain sport, whatever. But it is super, I think, and one of the things that I wanted to bring up was like locker room culture was something that I struggled with in undergrad. Was just like you're changing in front of each other, you're all looking at each other, you're saying, oh, you look so skinny, like you have abs, whatever, you're comparing yourselves to each other. And that's really hard, and especially for these, we're young 20s, you're impressionable at this time in our lives, it's really difficult to go through that. So I know you mentioned, not doing the Apple Watch thing, but what are some other tangible things that people can be conscious about going forward to maybe stop having this, harmful idea going around to other student athletes, other people in general? What are some things that we can do that are easy, everyday tactics that we don't think about, but if we put more effort forward, could be really helpful?
Um, Well, I think that just generally, like, it's not about like approaching like the specific issue, I guess, of body image and like confidence and just the way that you're relating to other people. Like, it all comes down to like how you're speaking to yourself. And if you are constantly like, or you can, I guess you could just take it from, even if you're thinking about other people, if you can't think about the way that you're talking about yourself, like if you're comparing and like measuring people's like productivity and like success and like value based off of like their size and the way that they look, and things that have nothing to do with the way that they connect and can impact you like as an individual, as a person. Like it's not that, I feel like, is the first thing we need to think about, is not like, okay, what should I do differently? It's more like, okay, how am I talking to myself first? How am I thinking about other people first? Like, what am I doing to like push myself every single day? Like, am I doing it because I want to like look a certain way? Do I want to be more likable to certain people? Why am I talking about this person this way? You know, like, and you realize when the way that you speak to yourself has like everything to do with like how you're also relating to and like surrounding yourself with others. And if you're surrounding yourself with a lot of people that are super judgmental, specifically towards the way that people are like looking, and especially like just in physical in their physical form, or just the way they're eating and stuff like that, it immediately to me is like, okay, obviously you can't change the way that everybody else is thinking about it, but the first step is to just be like, okay, like I want to actively improve on the way that I'm thinking about these things, because you can't really show up for yourself, or you can't really show up for others unless you're taking care of yourself. And until you can like look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I love myself, no matter how large your legs look that day, or like what you look like in a certain shirt versus another, like as long as you understand like that is good and like that's enough, then I feel like then we can start talking about tangible next steps after that. Because I feel like there's obviously never going to be true like meaningful and tangible change unless it really comes from like understanding that like all bodies are good, and all people are good, and there's nothing bad about the way that people are choosing to live and like exist in their bodies,
Right.
you know. And especially when you're on a team, I feel like obviously it's super competitive just growing up as an athlete, you know, like you are always comparing how good you are to somebody else in like a multitude of ways. And for girls, I feel like that's even more, I mean, guys obviously do struggle with body and like body issues. But I guess in my experience, I was always competing and trying to like figure out this idea of like this athlete body, this like regular like standard like society's like standard body. And it was always something that I was super ashamed of, for being like strong and like going to the weight room. And I know a lot of people who have struggled with getting themselves to the weight room and getting themselves to be stronger because of the way that they were being the way that they would be perceived or like judged by other people. And again, knowing that you can't control the way that other people are thinking of you, it really just comes first with changing the way that you're talking to yourself and like getting that workout in, because you know it makes you feel good and you know you're going to be stronger because you know it's going to make an impact on the field, not because you want to be more toned or look a little more committed or more dedicated than your teammates, you know. Also because everybody's body is so different, like the way that you train, the way that you eat, it looks so different for everybody, and everybody's different needs. So again, that also ties into this idea that like you have to keep reminding yourself that people are never going to understand you and like what your needs are. And as long as you can look at yourself at the end of the day and be like, you are enough and you're capable of being loved, and you're capable of being a good soccer player, like you're capable of making all of these friends no matter what you look like, because you're a good person and you're a hard worker and you have a lot of integrity in everything else that you do, then that is really the only way that I think that there could be change. Because realistically, we do have like social media that controls everything, especially now. Like I feel like ever since the pandemic, everybody's screen time and their addiction to their phones has gone up so much. And I really do think that it's not going to be like something you can force upon other people and like tell them what to do, because in my experience too was just telling my friends like, hey, like this isn't helpful when you say this, or I feel uncomfortable when you say this, like because they're not relating to it and not understanding it from their own experiences, like they don't necessarily, like maybe they can say and like want to support you and like want to change and want to be better, but it's not going to be as easy as you think it is. And um I love my friends because I know are the people that have been supporting me this whole time, and they haven't always been like the most perfect, obviously, like allies or whatever, like I don't know, but that is okay. Um and that's just because they have had to come to the like those realizations on their own. Like this was just my experience, and me telling them and opening up to them like made them, I guess, start to rethink the way that they were talking to themselves. It was never about me, you know.
Right. 2 points I want to make. One, I think it's so important, you kind of just hit on it, is like you were going through this really hard thing. And I think the second that you opened up to your friends, you opened up to a therapist, when you honestly just shared your story is when healing started to come. So
Yeah.
pro tip one, like I'm telling you guys, like the second that you open your heart, you open up to somebody, even if it's one person, that's when you can really start to understand what you're going through, have other people understand what you're going through, and begin the process of healing. The second point I wanted to make was I 100% agree with what you were saying about like it starts within, it starts with loving yourself, accepting yourself. But we have to understand like not every day is going to be perfect. You're not going to wake up every day, look in the mirror and be like, "Oh my gosh, I love how I look. Like, let's go have a great day." That's not the reality of life. Life is hard sometimes. We're all going through our own crap. That's just the reality of things. And I think, it's important to understand with those really great days where you're accepting yourself, loving yourself, you're going to have those bad days where you're not loving yourself. You're not having a good day in general. So understand that that is going to be part of the process. Understand that it doesn't have to look perfect every day. That's what we're trying to eliminate, is the idea of perfectionism. So I think that's something kind of just important to note. But I want you to talk about the hidden opponent. I think that's so awesome what you've been doing with that on Brandeis, and just kind of share with everyone what that is, because people may not know what that is, and kind of what you do with that on campus.
Yeah, so the Hidden Opponent, it's a nonprofit organization that it advocates and raises awareness for student athlete mental health, while addressing the stigma it holds in sports culture. And basically, the underlying mission is just to empower athletes to be able to like communicate, share, and to support each other in addressing their mental health experiences and struggles. Um, and really, what this looks like right now is there's just all these different social media platforms that are bringing together all of these different student athletes from different divisions, different leagues, different regions, and there are just different groups for you to like communicate and just like catch up with people, even just to meet people. I've had wonderful friends now that I've made through this organization, and they're all so inspiring because they're all here and with this like underlying drive to just not only want to better themselves, but just to improve like our athletic community overall. Because we all know that this concept of like no days off like really like eats all of us, in one way or another. And some people are better at managing it than others, or don't speak about it. But for a lot of people, it has caused them to lose a lot of love for the sport that they used to play, and or still continue to play every single day. And like a lot of people I know in college, they've really struggled with this, like this transition with having to like this imposter syndrome of, oh hey, like what if I quit, like this is not for me, like knowing that this is something that's eating them up, and with all the stress and all the pressure, and they just continue to let themselves suffer because they can't picture their lives without it. And this space is for people who are injured, for people that are no longer playing anymore, for people that are just friends of athletes and just everyone who just wants to learn more about mental health and what I guess the leaders of this movement are advocating for and like doing for our community. And so I found the hidden opponent because I was watching a TED talk by the founder, Victoria Garrick, and she it's a very famous TED talk, and I encourage anyone who's listening to this who hasn't listened to it to watch her TED talk, because especially as a female athlete, this is something that was super tangible to me, just talking about the pressure of not only like being good at soccer and like feeling like you're involved on a team and like involved in school, but also just like the external, like what is everyone like thinking of your time there. Like she talked a lot about how everyone thinks she was doing so well, and she kept it all inside, and that was what caused her to struggle with her mental health. And specifically what was tangible for me was that she started to speak more about her experience with an eating disorder, and that was the first time I ever heard anyone talk about that or relate it to the sports. And I felt so like extremely like target. I was like, what the like I've never like I felt crazy. I was like, I didn't know I was the only one that thought that way, and like whatever, right? So I immediately started following her on everything, and she founded this organization. And later that year, she announced that she wanted to do like this campus or this larger like nationwide like initiative to engage students at the high school and like college level too. And they were looking for people to be like ambassadors or like leaders that would help them expand their mission of like mental health advocacy. And I knew like immediately that I wanted to help contribute, because I just thought it was really awesome the work that she was doing. And if there was one thing that I learned from my therapist, like that at that time, was that there's so much power in just like being able to share your story and like be vulnerable, but it was something that I was never able to do. And when I met people in this organization, like I just felt so supported and so like validated and just being myself, and which was so different than I've ever experienced ever as an athlete, you know, like I've never thought that I could embrace like the things that I struggled with as an athlete. It was something that I never even, I feel like, allowed myself to finish or form sentences in my head, you know, feel like something was wrong and that like I could like maybe I should stop playing, or maybe I should like look at the sport differently, or the way that like I'm valuing myself differently, because you know your whole identity is your sport. And when looking back on my like decision to join the hidden opponent, I I don't regret it at all. And there are times where I was like, I don't know if I want to share my story yet. But then I was like, honestly, like I I know that so many other people and so many other athletes like feel the same way as me, and they've never known or never knew how to put those thoughts or those feelings into thoughts and those thoughts into words. And now that I was more comfortable doing so, and also just knowing that like I feel like I have always been so empowered just by talking to people, and like you know, like I love talking and like connecting to people. And I think that me sharing my story, being part of this organization, like it really solidified my commitment to like my recovery and like being better for myself. Like you said, like opening up is so important, like for your own healing. And for me, like when I shared that, like yeah, like and when I was open about how I was super passionate about this, I was like, oh my god, people probably think I'm so silly. Like people probably think like I don't know. I was just thinking all these things about how I could have been perceived. You know, like this is literally opposite of like everything that I believe in. And if I really cared about getting better, and if I really cared about making a difference, and if I really cared about wanting my teammates to be the best teammates they could be, you know, like until everyone starts thinking about these things and starts reframing conversations and just accepting people the way that they are, you're never going to be able to show up at practice and like fully commit to like everything and everyone there. And I thought that like this organization was like the best thing to happen for our generation, because obviously things are gonna, I mean, mental health can only be more and more, I guess, normalized in conversation, I feel like now. And I just like feel super proud that I am part of that, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to share something that we were talking about today texting. Was I was like telling Sabrina what I wanted to talk about today's episode, and she was like, "Yeah, that all sounds good. Like, I'll talk about it." And you said something that resonated with me. You said you haven't talked about it in a while, and it feels really sombering to revisit because even now you still try to ignore how you feel, and that just kind of hit home for me. I think anytime that we're passionate about something, we, like we've been talking about today's episode, we're vulnerable about something, we're openly always talking to people about it. Anytime that we, preach these things, for lack of better terms, and we need a minute for ourselves where we don't want to talk about it, we want to put it on, the back burner. I think it's really hard because there's times like I come on here and I preach, it's okay to not be okay, like be vulnerable with people, be honest with people, like blah blah blah. And there's times I'm not completely healed in those areas of my life that hurt me, my injury that hurt me, my mental health. There's days where I just sit in bed and cry because I'm not perfect and I still struggle with my, anxiety. And I think it's, I don't know, I think it's really tough for everyone to always be prioritizing their own feelings at the same time as prioritizing spreading, awareness for other people. And we tend to put ourselves on the back burner a lot of times. So I think that's also something to just kind of be aware of, like those people who publicize how they're feeling all the time. Maybe they are publicizing something one way, but feeling a different way sometimes. And that's, that is to be expected. Like that's the reality of the world. And I just wanted to bring that up because, I love how I think on the Brandeis team, you are, one of those people on your team who people can resonate with. People can say, "Oh, I'm having a bad day. Like, let me go talk to Sabrina." That was kind of the character on the team that I thought I was at Notre Dame. And it weighs on you. It makes you feel like you have to always have an answer. You have to always be doing okay. You have to always, show people the light. And that's just not, it's not always going to be reality. And I thought that was important to share because, what you say, like we ignore it sometimes because
Yeah.
that's what we think other people want to see and hear.
Yeah. I want to like, I don't know if you're gonna go off into like a different question, but like I really did want to talk about that because this is something I've been thinking about a lot. And like I mean, especially since I've been engaged with the hidden opponent and posting on Instagram, or just I've also like been interviewed a lot, and like people like, and I was doing like a big project with the school, and like I did a whole the hidden opponent fundraising event where I was talking about the organization, like what I'm doing. And so a lot of times, or a couple of times throughout the last year, there is just like waves of people that are just like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you seem like you're doing so well. Like, like I, that is so impressive that you're able to do that. Like, I'm really glad that you're in this place or whatever. And I just, like thinking about it, and also just like in those moments, like I just wanted to just start crying because like even in those times when I was sitting in that chair, like talking and I was being recorded or whatever, like I felt like, and just specifically in this last year, like I had not been myself. And um I it's so hard to like take those compliments when you feel like I feel like at this point when people ask me what the hidden opponent, when I'm advocating or when I'm just like posting or whatever, like I'm not doing it for myself, like I'm doing it to help other people. And that I realized is like also just so against everything that I believe in, because I feel like a lot of what I do struggle with and with my mental health is, as much as it's isolated, and like I say, like I don't like to resent other people, like, or isn't involved with other people, like I feel like I put other people before me. And that means like also like taking care of myself and my body. And I have just not really focused on like the little things, like cleaning my room and like answering emails on time and just answering my text or calling back my mom and like doing my laundry. Like There's these little things that I feel like that are a reflection of just like me avoiding greater stress and like other tasks. And it's so hard to like when this is all going in your head and people are just like celebrating how awesome you are when I like don't feel awesome. But I think the whole point is not like, oh, I'm so awesome for sharing. It's like you're awesome despite the fact like you're going through it. Like I think that people see, or I feel like a lot of people have seen like my vulnerability is like a symbol of like progress. I guess it is a symbol of progress, but like success, like it's like whatever. And obviously like everyone says like recovery isn't linear and like nothing's ever just black and white. And that was another thing with me was like I hope that when I share my story, like people won't just like pity me or like think that like this was some huge accomplishment of mine. Like this is something that like I am constantly having to work on. And like as much as I could be increments and like they could be cute little, I guess, successes, it still doesn't address the fact that like these are things that people struggle with like every single day. And I can't look at myself in the mirror every single day and be like, I love you. You know what I mean? Like I definitely don't do that. And I think that that's why it's so important that you have people around you and you are taking care or reminding yourself of those little things that you're super grateful for. And if you have people around you that are making you feel super special and important and like comfortable in yourself, not just like people that you can like have fun with or like watch the same TV shows as and like eat the same like bond over the same like meals over because you both like sushi or something, like like it's feeling like you can be yourself and be like love yourself like for who you are and like not feel like you have to like change that or like be anything other than like what you are like right now.
Right.
And like I think that I've been avoiding it and like I have been like pushing myself away from people like especially recently because I don't want them to think that like I'm not doing well because of all these like because of like I'm like engaged in the hidden opponent and like I'm super open about talking about mental health and stuff like that. So in a way I feel like I feel it's like paradox of like guilt and then pride, and I never really know, and I always just feel like I'm an imposter all the time. But at the end of the day I think it's more just like remembering that or trying to like control at least the people that are around you, because when you have people that are supportive and like reminding you of your value every single day, then it makes that a little bit easier, like that's why being vulnerable is so important, because people checking up on you even after you have like said that like you've been through everything, like things still happen. And it's super important to check up on people because like we're not meant to like do any of this alone.
Right. Well, I think, I know you don't like to hear that people are proud of you, but I think, you just being yourself, you being 100% Sabrina, that I love how you mentioned the paradox of feeling guilty and feeling proud. Like, dive into the things you're passionate about, dive into the hidden opponent, dive into sharing your story with people, because look, you only get one go around at this thing called life, and once it's over, it's over. And I, like yourself, I've always prided myself on what did I look like from the outside? What did people think about me? And with my injury and just kind of like life happening, I've realized that it really doesn't matter what people think about me. If I can wake up and be proud of myself and be happy with who I am, that is all that matters, because when life's over, it's over. So, that whole, feeling guilty for maybe people think that you're still struggling with your eating disorder or whatever it may be because you're still involved with things, embrace that. Be like, hell yeah, like I'm advocating for people who are going through what I went through because it's important and not enough people are talking about it.
Exactly.
But I want to talk about, I know we spent some decent time on the eating disorder, but again, like I've been saying for a long time now, I want to get someone on here to talk about their experience with it, because I obviously, like, I don't want to make things up for content. Like I can't speak to that. So thank you so much for being vulnerable on that. But I want to kind of talk about where you are now, like what has the last year, after COVID has hit. I know you took a semester off, correct? So I'm kind of curious because I don't think we've ever really gotten in detail about this, but what did that look like? And kind of, I mean, that had to have been really difficult, I imagine. So kind of just talk about that and how that kind of played a role in your mental health as well.
Yeah, so just COVID generally, like I feel like before COVID, no matter what, I feel that I just I got a lot of my happiness from just doing things with like people that I love and like making them feel like because they made me feel awesome. Like I always just loved being around people. I always knew that like that was something that I wanted to do with my life, is just to like be and like do things for people, work with people. Like I could never work behind a desk, and or behind a computer. And that's what COVID was, like you had to be so isolated. So that just on top of that, I just was really not doing well. And that really did exacerbate all of my destructive like eating behaviors, like I was feeling like super just like because I wasn't playing soccer every day, and like because I wasn't seeing everyone every day, and I was not really happy like in my house. Like I just am not, it wasn't a safe space. I just felt like super like unimportant and like unmotivated to do really anything. And it was hard because it's like you can't really do anything or do much about that, especially when it comes to like surrounding yourself with people and like just being in a good environment, when that was something that was really forced upon me. And so when I came back to school and I decided to take time off, I was like, okay, like now I was going to treatment. I was doing an intensive outpatient program that was like 11 hours a week of therapy. It sounds so crazy to say out loud. And then I was doing part-time work. I was a server at a restaurant, and I also was like helping with my one of my clubs that I was on the executive board with at school. We were becoming chartered, so I was just doing a bunch of things that like I wanted to just like keep myself like surrounded by people and like whatever. But most of the whole point of me taking my time off from school was to go to this intensive outpatient program. And the people that were like in my program weren't even there weren't even athletes. Like there were older women, there were a few men, and there were a few girls that were younger than me, and we all had struggled with an eating disorder in some type of way. And it was just like super, like I met amazing people and I became friends with them, and it was just so like it was just such a mind-blowing experience. Like I never thought about therapy, especially in a group setting, but being vulnerable in front of people that I didn't know, it's hard in some ways, but it's also easier, because then people who have experiences that are so unlike yours, like will like literally identify something or use some word or explain some situation that like you can totally relate to. And like it's like as much as these people are so different from you, like you really aren't alone. Like there are so many different ways that people are struggling and you have no idea. And so like that whole time like apart, like just doing things, like my life just looking so different during that time, it was like really, it was a lot. Like it was really heavy, and I had to learn how to just like treat myself and like respect myself in different ways. Like it was really hard for me to commit to this like program that was like making me like for example, right, like this, like part of recovery and like part of therapy, especially like for an eating disorder, is like you have to go outside of your comfort zone. And that's just for anything, like you have to do things that you weren't doing before, because old ways don't open new doors. Like that sounded really poetic. That's funny.
Exactly.
But yeah, old ways like don't open new doors. So I was like eating more than I was comfortable with, and as you would do in eating disorder treatment, or you would be eating less depending on what your situation is. And I thankfully was living with girls that were super supportive and were super interested, and they also play on sports teams, so like I felt like I was in a really safe space. But after my program ended, I remember they were just like, okay, like this is your last day, or like whatever, and I was just like, I didn't feel like I was ready. Like I was like, what? Like I'm not at all ready, and I didn't even know what that meant. Like I'm done. Like how does that, And I guess in a way it was like if you aren't telling yourself like I'm ready to recover, that's something that's like you're never ever going to get to a place where you can be like, I'm proud of like what the progress that I've made, because you're not thinking of progress, you're just thinking of staying stuck. And I was going through like waves of like wanting to get better, not wanting to get better. And honestly, like I can't even say that was like the best thing to happen to me, because it was a really decision that I made, but I didn't feel like this immediate relief that like people I think assume when I tell them I did this intensive outpatient program and now that I'm doing classes again. Like, I even had to write like a health, it was called like a health leave of absence. I had to write like an application back to the school in order to like convince them that I was ready to be a student again. And every single thing that I wrote was bullshit. Like I was like, I am feeling like so confident. I'm doing this now, and I'm blah 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 blah. Like after doing this for this many months, like I'm now ready to like blah blah blah. And I was just like, I was doing it just because like I felt like I was going through the motions again, and like whatever. Like I was just did something I have to do. I already spent too much time. Like I was just feeling like super like ashamed of like everything, like I can't just take enough more time off. Like I can't do all this stuff. Like I have to just get back on schedule. Especially because it's like when you tell people, oh, I took time off, and
Right.
they're like, for why? And it's like, do I tell them that I worked, or do I tell them that I was in therapy? Like, and then I'm like, if I tell them that I worked, what is me being like the hidden opponent and like advocating and like talking, like, like normalizing those things. So sometimes I kind of like pick and choose of how I'm going to describe it to people. But I think that if anything, it was just super humbling for me, because when I did go through my recovery, it's like, you spent all that time doing this. Like, obviously, like, it's never going to be perfect. Like, you're going to still it was never going to be gone. Like, you're going to have to work on this every single day. Like, this is something that you're going to have to wake up and battle every single day. And you can either choose to let it consume you, or like choose to fight back against it. And especially with just using all the tools that I learned, like, or at least the resources and like the different exercises that I use, like to help me get to like to manage my anxiety and like manage my intrusive thoughts. And so yeah, like I think that my time off was more like really humbling for me, because as it went on, like in the next couple of years, like I think it was a couple of weeks ago where I was thinking that I was like fully recovered. And I know during the fall I was thinking those things, like, oh, I think I'm like fully recovered. Like I was at a point where I was not thinking about food, like when I was at soccer, I was at soccer. I wasn't thinking about what I ate earlier, what I was going to eat tomorrow for lunch, like what I like how I'm going to go grocery shopping, like the types of food that I'm going to get, like how I'm going to balance it all out, and like all these things. Like those are all things I was stressed out about all the time. Or like even when I wasn't in season and it was the spring, it's like I have to get this workout in then, and I have to do this then, because then all this food thing, like all this progress made with food, it's like none of this is going to balance out. Like I was just always scared of like just losing control. And I felt like for the first time that like I was able to, when I was injured this year, after I got injured, but now I have a chronic injury. It's called costochondritis, and basically there's like inflammation in like my lungs and like my breast like bones and stuff, and like my ribs. I don't know. They couldn't figure it out. I was like back and forth at the hospital again, like doing whatever, like I don't know. But I went to the chiropractor. He fixed me up a little bit. It's just something I'm gonna have to like deal with the rest of my life, and which is scary. But either way, I was out for a really long time, and like um that was like again like a reminder of like why am I here? Like why am I playing soccer? Why am I doing this? And I took time off, and now I'm like being forced to like take more time off. And this wasn't all for nothing, but like now it's kind of just like challenging me, like, okay, like what do I have to do to like take care of myself right now? Like what why am I here, and like why is this important to me? And it always came down to the fact that like I just really cared about like my teammates, and I really just wanted like our team to just um really just embrace the special thing that we had, because we were so talented. And um this vulnerability thing that we started to talk about when you were helping us out in the fall, like that really made a difference in like the way that our team connected with each other and spoke to each other like on and off the field. And I wasn't thinking about like uh exercising and like how fit I was and how much I was eating anymore. Like I wasn't like eating things and like trying to and doing all these calculations in my head about how much or how little I have to like sacrifice later or tomorrow. Like I just felt like I was happy and like able to like enjoy and just like like go to that tailgate and like have a slice of pizza and like not freak out, like like even if I didn't just run 3 miles on the field. I was hungry and like I deserved to eat. And those are the types of things that like I had to like confirm with myself. But if I didn't go through all of that, if I didn't go through that with my time off, if I didn't have like that, if I didn't spend that time trying to like reframe and like respond to all of those like intrusive voices in my head, then I wouldn't have been able to like be at that place and like enjoy that the season that I had last fall with my teammates.
I'm kind of curious because for me, like my injury changed how I looked at soccer. Like I took it for granted before I didn't have it. So I'm just kind of curious, like what did your view of soccer turn into after, you came back from therapy, you went through all these hard things. I know like you speak so highly on how you care about your teammates and that's a big part of your why, but for individually yourself, like how did that transform the way you looked at the game that you played your whole life and loved?
Um, so I was definitely scared at first. Like I remember we were doing like scrimmages, like we are just like playing pickup in the spring, or like no coaches were even there, but I was like nervous, and like that's what it was like. Like it was before I was even injured too. Like when I was here, when I got here as a freshman, that's what the climate was. Like it wasn't just me. Like a lot of people felt anxious to go to practice, like scared of messing up, like scared of like not like like I don't even know. I did not play soccer the way that I liked playing soccer. I didn't feel like I was playing soccer the way I used to. It just didn't. It felt like a completely different thing for me. It didn't a completely different activity, and it's crazy to think about because I still understand it now. Like I and it's a whole bodily like aversion thing. Like I step on the field now, and I still have to fight back like the anxiety. And I used to never have to I used to step on a soccer field and feel like so excited and like so at peace with myself. And then it became something even before I was injured, but even more so after, that was like, okay, like I have to play so well. Like I have to do all of this because like I need to prove that I belong here, and I need to make up for what I lost. And like I want to show that I didn't fall off from when I was injured. Like those are all things that were in the back of my head. And I I mean, it did help that I learned how to um, like manage my anxiety on the field a little bit by doing like uh, cognitive like conditioning with like tapping and stuff like that. And like those are like little things like that like cognitive behavioral therapy, those are things that you would be able to benefit from, like as an athlete, with anxiety, like doing little, like, so for example, like I would like just try to picture in my head like a time where I felt like the most confident, and like I know I just like felt I could just, when I picture it right now, and I envision myself on the field and just all this adrenaline rushing through, like I just had a give and go and I'm making another run down, or like I'm communicating really loud and my teammates are supporting me, and like those are the types of things that I try to hold on to, like when I step onto the field now, and try to really just think outside of myself, just like think about this idea and this goal of like wanting to get better and like wanting to be better with the people around me, not really because I am not good right now, but because like I feel so good when I move my body that way. Like it's so rewarding when you make a good touch and like you can like handle and like be composed under pressure. But those are things that are so hard to do when you're stressed out and when you have a lot of anxiety. And so like again, like if it going to therapy made it super helpful for me to learn how to manage my anxiety. And when I did get waves of just like a lot of doubt and just intrusive thoughts, like I am so mean to myself in my head. Like if I mess up a task, like if I don't run back fast enough, like if someone yells at me, like I'm not getting offended by it, but like I just know that I'm telling that like to myself, like in my head, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm the first person to criticize myself like all the time. And going to like talking about this and like being more open and being more vulnerable, and like learning that like you can mess up and it's okay, and like you're still yourself and like you're okay, like you're still capable of playing soccer, so you are still loved, like that is so important, like even to take on the field, because like, and I think that also with the teammates part, it's as much as that is also something you need to talk to yourself and say to yourself, but it's something that you want your teammates to do for you too. And like it's so important to understand that when you mess up, it doesn't mean that like that's you as a player, that's like that something, a silly little maybe accident, whatever, but like it doesn't mean it has to define every single next play, every single thing you've ever done. And just trusting like yourself and like trusting that is true, and also trusting that of your teammates is like super important. And that's why I feel like I do focus on like the teammates part, because like I want to like show up and like feel like I can like, and like like I'm super there, and I'm super like supportive, and like I'm super like communicative and just coachable, like with my teammates, like with my coaches, because I want them to also be the same like for themselves. And I think that especially in soccer, like it has like such a ripple effect because you have to play with other people.
Yeah, no, I think that's all very valid. um so yeah, I guess my final question would just kind of be, this is your last season playing soccer, probably, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, when it's something you can prepare for, it's something that you can look back and, I wanted to mention this earlier. You were kind of talking about, when we were talking about not talking about what's going on in our own lives. One of the things that I try to do sometimes is, because I think it's important to relive those hard times in our lives, relive them and learn from them. And one of the things that I try to do that I think could help other people is like, so for me, like one of the biggest triggers was like my scars being big and ugly, and I was embarrassed and ashamed. So, once in every while, I'll look back at my photos and I'll look back and see like a moment in my life, like if I was wearing a dress and you could see my scars, and I'll be like, I remember how I felt in that moment and how ashamed, and I felt so ugly. And now to be happy and proud about them, I think that's something that really grounds me and reminds me of what I've been through and where I am, is being able to look back at those moments. So I wanted to mention that because I think that could be a helpful piece of advice for somebody listening with a similar situation. But yeah, what is it like preparing for the final season?
I have I've had so like many mixed emotions, and they happen all the time, every single day. Um, like I will go from being like just so excited, like like I am going to again, like I talked about before, like how I love the summer because I associate it with just like me taking back like myself, like playing soccer again, like just bettering myself and like taking care of my body so I can show up in the fall, and that will just have compounding effects in other ways in my life, like me being organized and like me being ready for school and me just being like a responsible friend and a responsible person generally. Um, but also recently I've just been really struggling since the end of the school year. Um, I like I just wasn't really like I had a really hard time like this semester. Like it was just I was not doing that well, and I was like didn't really feel anything like after the year was done. Like I still feel a lot of like shame, a lot of guilt, and it's been hard for me to even move on to the next step sometimes. Like thinking about soccer, it's like I still have to like address that or whatever. I don't know. Um, but at the same time, it's also like knowing that I have this chronic injury, um, that's something that's super scary for me. That what if I do put in all this work to for soccer and just for the team, and I'm injured again? And what I try to tell myself is, okay, like, and that happens, and then I go on like with life. It's hard for me to like come to a conclusion sometimes. Like obviously, it's super like when I wake up every single day, it's like, do I get that lift in? Like, do I go on that run? Like, and um, I don't feel better about myself when I'm isolated and staying in bed. And it takes, or it took me really to like open up to my friends about it and be like, yo, like I'm like really struggling with like motivating myself with soccer, and like them saying like, you know what, like me too, like I don't really know what's going on. Like I just like don't like I don't feel like I'm gonna be like I don't feel ready right now. And obviously we still have a lot of time left, but just like being able to talk to somebody about it, and then being like, we should be holding each other accountable. Like we're gonna do this together. And like for example, like with McKenna, she's away on vacation right now, but when I was like talking to her before she went away, and I just started playing with the NEFC team, which obviously she's playing on too. And I mean, I've loved like the two practices I went to. Like it was nice to just like not, I guess, not feel stressed out, but I kind of was expecting that little kick. And um, just talking to her about it, and her just like being like, you know what, like when we come back, like let's like plan and like do this together. Like I'll go to the field like whenever, um, and we should do like this because like it works with my schedule. And just I there is such like a unspoken like thing about like how like we go from like having these rigid schedules and just like having our lives planned out for us, and just like now having to like really just decide if we want to commit to ourselves to it. And having her to like talk to, and just like other friends that are also working out, like, or other student athlete friends that are also like preparing for their seasons, is um it's it's super helpful. And um I made the mistake, I guess, of just like not talking to them about it beforehand, because like it's so hard to carry the shame that you do with like feeling like you're not being a good enough, or you're not doing enough. And um just being able to like say that out loud is one thing, but to express it to somebody else like on your team, and like them that like for them to still be like, that's okay, like we can do this together, like I'm doing, like it was so important for me. And I guess it all just comes back full circle again with just like being vulnerable and being honest. And um if I were to not do that, I probably wouldn't have, this like drive and like this excitement, I guess, to like do it with her, um rather than alone. Like I don't really think I have that urge to get all these things done like by myself, you know?
Yeah. Well, I hope you're preparing because we're definitely gonna win Natty this year. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, I hope you know, one, how much I appreciate your vulnerability. Like, I've learned so much from you just in the short amount of period of time I've known you. I know other people listening will learn a lot. I know your teammates who've been with you for the past 4 years have learned a lot from you. I know Mary has learned a lot from you. So you truly have impacted so many people. Um, and just keep, being vulnerable, keep being truthful to yourself. Um, I think that's all the questions I have. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we didn't bring up, or literally anything?
I don't think so.
Right.
I feel like I talked way too much.
No, that's fine. It's not, I mean, like, I obviously come with prompted questions I want to talk about, but whatever direction it goes, it goes. And I think, you know, just being able to hear what you had to say, especially about your eating disorder, I think, I felt very educated. And I hope that somebody who may be struggling with something similar out there can listen and realize it's okay to struggle with that and seek help. So,
Yeah, I want to also emphasize, if this is still going to be on the thing, even if like your experience with like your body and like your eating and exercising didn't sound like mine, if you like whatever you're going through like is enough to like talk about it or seek
yeah.
help. If you think that if there's ever a thought in your head like this isn't working, or like I'm not enough, or like I'm not good enough, like that is the first and most clear sign to like try to like at least rework and really rethink about what and how you're like speaking to yourself and why, because it will go a long way, especially not only for yourself but with within your teams and just within your friends and like your relationships. Like the way that you speak to yourself is so important.
Yeah, well, I love that. And I will make sure to, in the show notes, I will post Victoria Garrick's TED Talk, and I'll also post your information about the hidden opponent because I think that's a really great resource for people to look for. I think that's it. So thank you again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And just, I know it's not easy to always open up. So I hope you know that, I appreciate it and so many others will too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was super helpful for me too.